Hello, welcome to the world of Word.
Coming up, another word in your attic.
And if you enjoy this, visit our Patreon to find out more about our exclusives and our general work of national importance.
The link is in the notes below. And now, on with the show.
Word in your attic, a Zoom with a view.
Welcome to another Word in your attic. We're delighted to be joined by man about town, former motorcycle messenger at Stiff Records, I think many hundreds of years ago, press officer, video director, film director, now resident in the United States, Nigel Dick. Nigel, how lovely to see you. Where do we find you? Where do we find you, Nigel?
You find me on the edge of the Rockies. I'm looking out at a mountainous area going up to the right. I'm 4 miles from Red Rocks, the famous Red Rocks.
Oh, right.
Famous from Blood Red Sky by U2, and infamous because when the Beatles did their first major tour of the US and they played Red Rocks, it was the only place that did not sell out.
Oh.
And Hendrix played there, but now it's mostly jam bands when it's open. And it was also famously the place where Gary Hart announced his presidency.
I see.
Because he lives about 80 miles down the road.
So what, you lived in
Can
Los
we
Angeles?
imagine it would be like this?
What made you move there?
Well, I lived in LA for 30 years, and I've always lived alone since I was 11, basically. And I got married, and neither my wife or myself had ever lived with anybody.
Oh,
so we decided we needed to buy a really big house, and this is the only place we could find a big house that we could afford.
Oh, right.
Because I'm
so
surrounded
that's presumably because you were refusing to throw anything away, right? Neither of you were going to get rid of any of your possessions.
Well, it was not so much just possessions, and we'll get to that in a minute. But my wife is, like you chaps, is a writer, and of course she needs silence, and I'm surrounded by guitars. I have my own editing room. I run around a lot, so I make a lot of noise. So she has a room up that way, 3 stories, right up in that corner, and I'm down here in the basement. So I'm afraid I've rather spoiled your program, and it's a word from your basement rather than your attic.
Well, it looks very splendid anyway. So we asked you to get out a few old items for a bit of show and tell. Have you been able to find anything?
I've found some things which it's very interesting as you go through it. You go, now, is this interesting just to me, or would this be of interest to other people? But I'm sure at the end of it, when you've pressed your off button, you'll be able to have a cackle at my expense.
That's fine.
So I'm going to start off at the very lowest of the low with this appallingly ugly guitar.
Oh, good grief!
Which is a BC Rich, as I think you see. And this was from a video I did with Lita Ford, and And obviously it's the cheap version of the BC Rich, and they just added 2 pieces of red tape here to match whatever design she had on her guitar. And she has signed it for me, and I hope younger members of the audience might wish to go and make a cup of tea. Would you like me to wash your dick for you? Ha ha. You are the greatest, Nigel. Lita Ford. So, which kind of explains what I have to go through my whole life.
Well, but to be fair, you've drawn attention to it.
You have.
You always used to send emails they were always signed from the Dick at Nigel's desk.
Before email, there used to be.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I used to work at Stiff Records, so as the first time I met both of you gentlemen, I became the Stiff press officer, and on my first day, had to ring somebody at the Times, and they said, "Who's calling?" And I said, "Nigel Dick from Stiff Records." And they went, "Oh, right, yeah," and put the phone down on me. So, I mean, you have a choice.
I remember you taking me around Hampstead Heath with 10-pole Tudor for smash hits. Do you remember that? They had a single out. It was like the Swords of 1,000 Men.
I not only remember it, I have a picture of you with 10-pole Tudor somewhere over here, which I've tried to find to show you today. And obviously I'll have to send it to you separately. But there you're wearing a coat and standing beside 10-pole Tudor, which was a very interesting experience. I think I was taking stills that day as well. Yeah.
Nigel, you have a very distinguished career as a director of pop promos, and you seem to me to have done an extraordinary amount of them with people like Lita Ford and, you know, kind of noisy hard rock groups, which is not really it's not you normally, is it? Is that because you started with Guns N' Roses?
Well, it's a truth that you will do what you've been doing. So, as we all know, David, you've been writing these fabulous books about music recently, which are just wonderful. I don't suppose the phone has been ringing saying, can you write a book about 30s Hollywood?
No,
so
shame.
You know, and actually this will lead us, I'll explain to you how this kind of works in terms of the realms of things going differently. We'll just take a little left turn for a moment. When I used to work at Stiff, of course, we all wanted to improve our careers. So I took it upon myself one day to decide I wanted to become an A&R man. So, and I think I've mentioned this in the Word. You asked me to write an article for you for once, but I'm going to show you the evidence now. So I rang Virgin Records in Sheffield. I had heard about this young band, and the manager of the band got on the back of his friend's motorcycle from Sheffield to London, which is what, 200 miles?
200 miles, nearly, yeah.
To come and give me this record, which I'll show you in a second. And I played it. I thought, well, this is pretty good. And I'd read a little bit about these guys. So I took it into my boss, the inimitable Dave Robinson, who we all call Robbo. And I say, I found this new band and I think they're going to do something. Would you like to hear their record? So Robbo grabs the record from me, puts it on the player. Halfway through the first track, there's a roinch as he pulls it off, and he hands it back to me, and he always has a pencil behind his ear like this, and he says, the thing you got to understand about this business, Nigel, is you got to sign a band that's going to make you some money. So he did not sign this band, and this is on the Bludgeon Rifola label, and it is the first
wait to see who they are.
By Def Leppard. So I guess 100 million album sales is what. So
exactly.
To bring it back to your question, David, then, you know, when I started doing videos, I started doing poppier stuff. You know, I did Howard Jones, a lot of Tears for Fears, blah, 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 blah. Then one day my phone rings, and out of the blue, this guy rings me up, and can I shoot Great White, which is a band that he managed. So I did a video for Great White. Then a second video for Great White came up. And at the same time, he said, I've got this band, Guns N' Roses. Will you shoot Guns N' Roses? And I rejected it, actually. And because I was very busy, but I relented, and that was Welcome to the Jungle. And then we went on to do Sweet Child of Mine, blah, 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 blah. So now I'm doing nothing but heavy metal bands, or hair metal bands, as they were then called. So eventually the phone rings, and I have Peter Mensch ringing me up, who is the manager of Def
Leppard. Yes, of course.
And when I was at Phonogram, after I left Stiff, Peter Mensch would come into my office all the time. And I told him my true feelings about one of the Def Leppard videos that he'd done with another director. I didn't like it. I didn't feel it was right for them. And he said to me, the thing you have to understand, Nigel, is you wouldn't know a rock video if it hit you in the face, which is very nice of him. And so then I get hired to shoot Def Leppard in Amsterdam. And the night before the shoot, the phone rings in my hotel room, and I pick it up, and it's Peter Mensch. And he says, you know, I want to make sure you're going to do a really good, great job for us tomorrow, blah, 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 all the rest of it. And I couldn't resist saying to him, but I want you to remember that you told me that that I wouldn't know a rock video if it hit me in the face. And there was a long silence on the phone, and the phone went down, and I've never spoken to him since. So, you know, time passes and then suddenly you get asked to do Oasis. So now you're a Britpop guy, and then you find yourself shooting Backstreet Boys, which could not be more different from Guns N' Roses. And then suddenly Britney comes along and you're shooting nothing but 16-year-old girls for a year and a half. So your career just follows the waves, you know. So I mean, it's a truth that if you're a writer for Rolling Stone and you're a big, I don't know, Iggy Pop, David Bowie fan, eventually you're going to get asked to write an article about Danzig, you know, and you have a choice. You can say, I don't understand it, I'm not interested, or eventually you go, yeah, what the heck? And for me, I found that actually working with bands whose music I would not play when I get home, it makes the work better, strangely. I think I try harder.
Right. Isn't it easier to some extent? It's like that with journalism, because if you're outside the group and don't have that emotional involvement, you have to analyse what it is that's interesting and exciting and you can sell. Well,
yes. I mean, you have to sort of be rather cold and unemotional about it. Say, what's their market? I mean, it's down to marketing. And interestingly, to go back to Guns N' Roses, I didn't really know what I'd done for Guns N' Roses until 25 years later. And I watched Welcome to the Jungle, and that video is explaining who Guns N' Roses are to me. And I'm the guy that directed it.
Shot it. Yeah.
So you kind of go, oh, I guess okay, now I get it.
But I've always got this feeling about bands. Bands have really long careers, 30, 40 years or whatever. But actually, their public perception is set very early on. And that's what people continue to buy tickets to go and see. So they go and see whatever shape Guns N' Roses are in now. What they're seeing in their mind's eye is your original video. Your original Paradise City or whatever those videos were. In those days, it's like when people go and see Bruce Springsteen, and Bruce Springsteen's in his 70s, what they're seeing in their mind's eye is the cover of Born to Run.
Yes, and of course, and unfortunately setting themselves up for a fall because he isn't that guy anymore. I went to see Bruce about 10 years ago, and the thing when I first went to see him was that moment where he'd look at the piano and he'd just jump on the piano.
Yes, okay.
and there was this I'm watching him in some Enorma Dome in LA, and the piano's over there, and he's like looking at the piano, but now it's like, am I going to make it?
Well,
and the whole audience are like, oh God, is he actually going to be? And there's a huge whoosh of relief as he actually manages to make it on top of the piano.
I mean, he is fairly good at that kind of stuff. It's like Mick Jagger always says this, doesn't he? About when they play big venues, it's an athletic endeavor, isn't it? You've got to be fit. That's more important than anything else. Is can you do that kind of thing?
Well, and there's a rush of adrenaline. I've done a number of these things over the last month. And at the end, I'm realizing I'm perspiring, I'm exhausted. My wife's been doing a bunch of them as well. And it's very interesting how just talking to a TV, a computer screen can be, tiring for you.
Absolutely. So what else you got there, Nigel?
Well, I'm going to show you just I don't know why, but I have this perception that people think that I just sort of lucked into what I do. And I used to be a DJ when I was in my late teens, and I would not only buy the record. This is by the Detroit Spinners.
Oh yes. Well, which record is it? Could it be on?
This is Rubber Band Man.
Rubber Band Man. Yes.
I would not only buy the record and put it in a nice cardboard sleeve for my DJ. I would design the logo.
Oh, very good.
Lovely.
And then I would collect the
chart positions from Melody Maker and stick it on there. So, and why I did this, I have no clue, because I would never speak. It wasn't one of those, and that to this week's
rated at number 4.
Coming in at number 17 from the Detroit Spinners. I never said a word. I just play the record. So why in heaven's name I went to this effort? And I not only do that, here's perhaps one of the less played records. It's I Got the Music in Me by Kiki D. And here's the record review.
Oh, you've cut out the record review. You see, when we've been doing these things for the last few months, and it's remarkable the number of people we've had who got similar things. You know, they kind of adapted their school scrapbook activities to reflect their passion of pop music. And, you know, people really did cut things out of trade papers and put them in.
And we've had people who've built a whole scrapbook, something with the tickets and then the posters and then whatever fan letters and things like that, and then reviews, entire sections on Depeche Mode or whatever.
And here's my one for Queen from the Sheer Heart Attack album, which is...
That's what you kept inside, the copy.
Which I kept inside. Usually I'd stick it on the inside of the album. And so I've got information on... I mean, I knew all this stuff. Why I bothered to cut it out? I have no idea. But, and this is the thing that I found interesting when I started working at Stiff and met people like yourself, is that up till that point, I was convinced that I knew more about music than anybody in the world. And then suddenly, you know, I'd find myself having a conversation with somebody like Glenn Coulson, and I'd be telling him about Led Zeppelin and whatnot. And he'd be like, yeah, right. Little knowing that he used to be John Bonham's drum roadie for 6 weeks. You know, I mean, the gall that I had. And so gradually you sort of understand that it's actually better to keep your mouth shut, because you're surrounded not only by people who know better, but by people who were there. You know,
but it's also one of the things about music is the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Which I suppose is the same about any subject.
I suppose it is.
Well, I'm now going to tell. I mean,
go on.
I had two things that I really wanted to do as a teenager. Both of which were, of course, completely impossible to achieve. And one was to become Jimmy Page, and the other was to be on Top of the Pops. So I go to Stiff. I'm a motorcycle messenger, as you kindly reminded the audience. But that's fine.
Nothing wrong with that. So
I'm very proud of my time on the bike. I then did production, then I became a press officer, which is how I met you guys. And then eventually Robbo said to me, all right, you're going to help me make videos. So we were making all those madness videos. And one day the phone rings and it's Robert Plant on the phone for Robbo. And he wants to make the first video for his first solo album. So I'm like, bloody hell, it's Robert Plant. Oh my God. You know, butterflies in the stomach. So
you were a major Led Zeppelin fan, weren't you?
I wasn't a Led Zeppelin. Well, you're going to find out, guys. I'm not going to jump the story. So we all climb into our art director's Ford Escort van, which only has one seat, because Simon, the art director, was a drummer, you know, of an evening. So there was no passenger seat. So there's me and Robbo sliding around in the back of the Escort. And we go to Robert Plant's hotel, which is in a very chic part of Shepherd's Bush, a little sort of boutique hotel. And we have this meeting with Robert Plant, who's very nice. And we talk about what we're going to do for the video and what Robert's going to do. And I'm just keeping quiet. I'm like going, oh my God, I'm in a room with Robert Plant. How amazing is this? And then at the end of the meeting, Robert says, well, thank you very much. I'll see you on Tuesday. Where are you guys going now? And we said, well, we're going back to Camden Town. And he says, oh, great, you can drop me off in Soho. And we all look at each other and we don't know what to say. I mean, this is a man who's been traveling America in not his own private jet, his own private jet airliner, you know, whatever it's called. And we're like, Robert, we're in a Escort van with no seats in it.
With one seat.
And he stands up and he puts his hands on his shoulders and he says, well, before all this Zeppelin business, I used to work on a building site, and every weekend I drive back to London and back in the back of a transit with a bunch of Marshall amps. You think I've never been in the back of a van with no seats before? And we're all like, and so he came down with us, he climbed in the back, and we're going around the Shepherd's Bush roundabout, and suddenly Robert Plant just slides into me. And I just thought, how cool is that? You know, he had every reason to demand a limo, and he's sliding around in the back of the van. Anyway, so we get to the day of the shoot, and his guitar player doesn't show up.
Oh.
Robbie
Oh.
oh,
I like this.
Oh.
So it just so happens that I have this cheesy Les Paul copy, not a Gibson Les Paul, but a Jedson Les Paul, which I bought in Denmark Street for 50 quid. And so Robbo tells me to go back home and pick up my Les Paul copy, and I'm in the video as the guitar player.
Oh, fantastic. Which
So-
video? What's the song?
We'll
song is
have to.
called- Song is called Burning Down One Side.
Okay, fine. We're going to find
And-
it.
We'll find it, and we'll post it at the end of this. We've got to
it's
see
not
that.
very
It's
good.
fantastic.
It's-
You didn't
it's
actually have to
not very-
play it, just miming, presumably.
I'm miming. Oh God, if I'd got to play, that would have been the end of my showbiz career right there. And so I mimed the video, incidentally dressed as a waiter with bandages wrapped around my head for reasons which have long since been forgotten. So, and this is the guitar, which incidentally is also in the Madness Our House video, but that's another story for another day.
Wow.
And at the end of the video of the job, I take my favorite all-time album, which is Led Zeppelin 1, and I ask Robert to sign it, which he does there.
To Nigel. Bound to be a star. Is that what it says?
It says, bound to go further and further. Thanks, Robert Plant. This album also signed by John Bonham,
Oh, very good.
which is another
Terrific.
story where when I was at Stiff, somebody rings up one day and says, can I get 2 tickets to Ian Dury? And I'm like, that's a bit of a tough ask. And they said, well, I work at Atlantic. What do you need? And I said, well, if you can get me an autographed first Led Zeppelin album, you're in. And that's how I got
That's what it
Terrific.
And there's another story for another Led Zeppelin album, which is one of my least favorite albums,
present.
was that when I was at university in the holidays, I worked as a waiter, and this restaurant was owned by Roddy Llewellyn,
Oh, right.
the
Okay.
infamous Roddy Llewellyn. So one night they closed the restaurant, and I get to wait on Her Royal Highness Princess Margaret.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
I've nearly knocked over my mic with excitement. Princess Margaret, we've not had that in the podcast so far.
We
Take
have
your
this.
time.
This is a first.
And not
Because he
only
had a bit of a fling with her, didn't he? Very fast.
I'm afraid if I told you what I know, I would have to kill you.
All right, okay.
And at the same table was the first rock star I ever met, who was John Phillips from the Mamas and Poppers,
Oh, wow.
who was completely out of his head.
It would be.
Yeah.
As it happens, of course, I was still doing my ripping everything out.
Absolutely.
This review by Chris Welch. Yes, Chris Welch reviews Presents. Is he still with us, Chris Welch?
Yeah, oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, he's still with us. Yeah.
Here's the
Would have
program.
ended with something like very tight. We'll go far.
Good.
Yeah.
And they gave me a £10 tip. So what I've written at the top here, I've written, this is the 4th of now. Of course, that's interesting. I seem to have done American dating with August the 4th, 76. The wrong way around. Anyway, bought with the tenner kindly given to me by all at Parson Sally for serving Her Royal Highness.
Oh, very
So
good.
I bought this album, and
Right.
I've never played it.
It's
since.
the royal family paid for your copy of presents, basically.
Basically, that's what we're getting to, yeah.
That's how it works. Extraordinary.
And I was an architecture student, and halfway through dinner, her mom, you're supposed to call them mom, she said to me, my husband's an architect, and of course it's like you want to respond, well, you think I don't read the bloody newspaper? So there you go. So So I now have a nicer story. Perhaps
Go
a
on.
nicer story. In that I subsequently got asked to make a Paul McCartney video.
Oh.
And of course, you know, like all of us, I'm assuming of that age, I was a massive Beatles fan. And it's a long story of how it came together, which I'll spare you right now. But I am, by the way, writing a book about all these stories.
All right.
Anyway, so I'd read the papers just like everybody else. And I kind of assumed from what I read that Linda McCartney was perhaps somebody I wasn't going to like. So I met them on set and they were lovely. They were absolutely so down to earth. And she wanders off to the bathroom and Paul leans over and he says, you know, since we've got together, we've been together every single night, apart from the 3 nights when I spent in jail.
In jail?
Tokyo.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
which was, I thought was a very personal moment. And then we came to, you know, I shoot Paul's close up and blah, 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 blah. And then it's time to shoot Linda's close up. And we're shooting in this water pumping station in southwest London somewhere. And there's a balcony around it. And the balcony is packed with people. God knows where they came from. And Linda's there at her piano and we're setting up the shot. And I sensed that she was a bit nervous. So she says to me, I say to her, would you like me to get rid of all those people? You know, because I can do that. I'll just ask, I say, guys, you have to leave right now. She's like, no, it's no problem. So we shot her shot and she's, you know, trying to do her best Keith Emerson. And about 20 minutes later, I wander out to get a cup of coffee and she's already at the craft service table getting a carrot. And she says, can I ask you a question? And I'm like, yeah. And she says, if I'd said yes, would you have got rid of those people for me? And I said, well, of course. And she said, oh, I wish I'd known because they were really freaking me out.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, that you know, that's a really interesting. She was obviously very.
Well,
very
can I tell you that David and I had a meeting with Linda McCartney in the first ever Q Awards. Do you remember that day?
Yeah.
And the stars of the show were McCartney and Linda. The whole thing was kind of hooked around them. And we were just desperately worried that they wouldn't turn up on time or turn up at all, actually. They turned up 20 minutes early. And the first thing Linda McCartney did, Dave, you remember, was start laying the tables.
Laying the tables.
She got the napkins, got the knives and forks and started laying all the tables for us. I mean, that's pretty fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah. You won't get that with most people.
Paul is one of the few people who took the time to ring me personally afterwards to say thank you.
Really?
And
Really?
Linda wrote me this letter, which I've framed, which says, Nigel, thanks for making me look so good. Love, Linda. So, which I thought was wonderful.
Right.
Very sweet. And I think, apart from Robert Plant, this was the first time I ever asked somebody to autograph something for me. And I took my, by this time I'd sold my copy of McCartney's first album, but he did sign it.
Oh, Dick. Paul McCartney.
Dick.
So,
Very
I mean,
good.
I guess if I keep one thing, that will be the one thing.
That's it.
I mean, right, now I have... when I first went to LA, I get a phone call and Rob Reiner's Stand By Me movie is coming out. So somebody rings me up and they says, we've got $20,000, which wasn't very much money. Can you make a video for Stand By Me, you know, intercut with the movie? And this would be 1985, I guess. And Benny King is going to be in it. And I'm like, holy crap, Benny King, wow, how cool is that? And they said, we'll get you a couple of kids from the video as well. So I make this video, which is perhaps not my proudest moment. It's a bit cheesy, but it does have Benny King in. And whoops, hang on. This guitar, which was the guitar I bought when I got to Hollywood, is in the video, and River Phoenix gets to play it.
Oh, really?
So this is the guitar River Phoenix played in. Guitar nerds will wonder why there's an extra pickup here, because subsequently I decided to try and turn it into a Strat, which was a very silly choice. But anyway, so this guitar was in Stand By Me, played by River Phoenix. I just looked at the video last night for the first time in 20 years, and I think this is even the guitar strap.
Oh, wow.
So River Phoenix has played this, and subsequently I did a video for Eddie Money called Let Me In, which I'm very proud of that video, because we had no money and there was no guitar player, so I got to be the guitar player, and I played this guitar in that video as well.
Right.
So it's been in a bunch of other videos. So, and at the end of all that, I get another letter. This one is from Benny King. There is his signature. And dear Nigel, a belated thank you for all your help during the taping of Stand By Me video. I couldn't have done it without you. Warmest regards, Ben E. King. Which, you know, I mean,
you've dealt with an awful lot of people. Would you say people in the music business are actually more gracious than people think, or less gracious than people think?
Oof. I would say it's on the cusp, really.
Right,
I mean, the thing that I try and explain to people is that if you're a Benny King or a Paul McCartney or a, you know, Robert Plant or whatever, you can't go anywhere without being, you're that guy, you used to play with Jeff Beck. It's like, no, I used to play with the guy who followed Jeff Beck. I'm Robert Plant, you know, whatever. Oh man, I love your stuff. And people just go instantly into this extraordinary devotional spiel. And of course they've heard it before. And on some level, they do want to hear that. But after you've been in the business 5, 10, 15 years, you're so over it. So my advice to people is that if you find yourself sitting next to a Robert Plant or whoever on a plane, you say, do you have kids? Tell me about your kids. Because everybody wants to talk about their children.
Right. There's a classic Bob Dylan one, isn't there, when somebody came up to Bob Dylan and said, Bob, I know everything about you, and you know nothing about me. And he said, let's just keep it that way.
Yeah.
It's a bit unkind, but there we are.
No, I think you have to sort of break it down and pretend that you don't know anything about them. I think that's really crucial. And sometimes it's very difficult to get through that barrier. And sometimes, you know, like Paul McCartney was very easy. I did 3 jobs with Cher, who I was in awe of. And she was very polite, but there was definitely this wall. And the first job that I did with her on the first day, which was Believe, the video Believe, I'm sort of stumbling over my words because I'm like, holy crap, this is Cher. I mean, she's won an Oscar and I'm directing her now. And she said, stop. She said, and I first met her in her house. And she said, when you're in my house, I want you to be nice to me. When I'm on set, tell me what I need to know.
Oh, really? That's good.
That's really good.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it was
perfect.
it was a wonderful, decent piece of advice.
It is a really good piece of advice. That is.
Yeah,
really
and
good.
It, you know, suddenly I'm like, okay, well,
yeah, get over there.
Stop miming for the, you know, stop doing this. Focus on this. And she's like, great, thank you. And it's lovely to have that moment of clarity where you can communicate, not because, hey, I'm meeting this person who means so much to me, but I'm working with this person today.
Right, yeah.
And
sure.
It is my, I mean, I see it as my responsibility, having been hired, to put them in the best possible light. And I try and shelter them from the storm. And I also try and, as a record label person said to me one time when I was directing a band called Britney Fox, they were called,
oh, yes.
Terrible hair metal band. She said, Nigel, you've got to protect them from themselves.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to protect the artist, and eventually, after a number of years, you get to a point where you think, I hope they have enough trust in me at this point that I've done this enough times that I can share with them, I don't think this is a great idea. So, you know, wouldn't it be great if no. And unfortunately, sometimes that means that at the end of the job, they'll go, bye, and you'll never see them again. But
yeah, because they don't want to be told at all.
no.
So looking back at the whole age of video, because you kind of got into it kind of at the beginning, didn't you, really? And you were in it at the peak of it, and now it's a bit reduced, isn't it? The world of promos and so forth. What did the budgets of these things go from and to, and you know what I mean? At the peak, what were they, and what have they gone down to now?
Well, I remember reading a quote by another video director who said, it's impossible to make a music video for less than $1 million.
There you go.
And I'm like, I've done about 300 so far, and they were all less than $1 million. I never made a video that cost $1 million. At its height, the entry-level video, you know, if the three of us formed a band right now and we signed to a record label in 1998, our entry-level video would have been $300,000.
Right.
And we would have been very upset if they offered us less. Now, to get a budget of $300,000 is, unless you're Beyonce,
it's not going to happen.
No.
Yeah.
So
all that was set in stone by Russell Mulcahy and people like that, wasn't it? You know, Duran Duran on yachts. It just built that whole idea that it was MTV and it was glamour and it was money and that was going to sell. You know.
Well, it also defined who they were.
Mm.
So I mean, which is obviously what a music video is supposed to do. So by signing into the Duran Duran fan club, you signed on for a life of luxury martinis at dusk, you know, in Miami. Whereas if you signed on for the stuff I was doing, you know, like Guns N' Roses, you were wandering the streets of Hollywood at 2:00 in the morning trying to score.
Yes.
So something which I knew a great deal about.
Yeah, I could imagine. So what are you working on now?
I'm actually working on a video for a prog rock band called Darwin.
Right.
And they are spread to the four winds. One of the sort of the lead member of the band is in Singapore in a hotel right now. Some of the band members are in LA. One of the band members is in Nashville. So I'm trying to get them to shoot themselves on.
Oh, really? You're doing it remote? Oh, really?
Oh, amazing. They're making their own video and you're editing it and directing it.
Well, I'm on the second one for the first one worked out like that, okay. The second one, the footage that the band members sent me was not so good, so I found a solution for that. And there's a story, it's going to have a story in it. And so I had to ring up a buddy of mine in Australia, and I've had all the conceptual stuff shot remotely in Australia last weekend. So I'm sitting here at my desk, and I've got Australia is 16 hours ahead. Singapore is 14 hours ahead. So at 5:00 at night, my time, everybody's just waking up.
Right.
So it's turned my world upside down this last few weeks.
Extraordinary. But apart from work, how are you getting on during this time? I mean, you're out in the country, so you're out, you know, you can go out for runs and walks and cycle and so
Are you
forth.
still a major cycle enthusiast? Because you did incredible journeys, didn't you, all over the world?
Yeah, no, I shot the Tour de France 2 years running in the Tour de France, which is a whole. It makes Lollapalooza look like a child's playground, really. I do still cycle. The issue that I have here is that when I take my bike out of the garage, we're at 7,200 feet.
Right.
So the first I mean, I have a choice when I get out of the house. I can either go up or I can
the
go
hill
down.
or down the hill.
So if I go down, but then I've got to get back up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I do is I go up, and by the time I get to the top of the hill, I'm at 7,500 feet, and I'm gasping.
I was going to say, surely the air is. I mean, Ben Nevis is only what 4,500 feet, so you're almost at twice the height of Ben Nevis. And the air must be pretty thin. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I have a third less oxygen than you guys do, and when you first move here, and you run upstairs, you get to the top of the stairs, and you're like, bloody hell. But the bad side of it is that when you go back to LA and you're at sea level, you don't have a sudden burst of energy.
No.
So I have another story for you.
Yeah, go on. Go on.
Yeah.
Whoops, guitar straps. So as you pointed out earlier, I was in the Stiff All-Stars, and this was my bass guitar, bought at the CBS shop underneath CBS Records.
Yeah, Soho Square. Yeah.
Right. So guitar aficionados will tell you this is not a very good bass because it's a CBS Fender, which they weren't so good. Anyway, so I'm at Stiff Records. I'm in this band. We would play, weekends and whatnot, and we had 4 singles out, and some of them even got airplay. Well, one day I'm now in the press office, and I'm the press officer for Jona Lewie, and over in my sort of adjoining office, which did not have a door, was Sunny Ray, who was the head of promo for Stiff. Lovely Sunny Ray in Spain. And she goes, "That's fantastic. Thank you, Michael. Great, wonderful. Oh, we're so pleased. Jona's going to do great." And she puts the phone down and she says, "Jona's on Top of the Pops tomorrow night, and he doesn't have a band."
Hey!
And I'm like,
yes, he does.
So, and I was a member of the MU. So,
perfect.
So, I show up, and of course, the interesting thing about the track, which was, hang on.
Does this clip still exist?
Oh yeah, it's on the web.
Oh yeah, is
What's
that Kitchen at Parties?
Kitchen at Parties.
Right.
So I'm miming to Kitchen at Parties, a song without a bass line.
That's never put anybody off.
It's exactly a mere detail. And it's got a bubbling synthesizer done by Bob Andrews, who was in the Rumour. So Bob's in the band, I'm in the band, a drummer who I never knew, and 2 girls are in the band. So I show up, we do Top of the Pops, and like I mentioned earlier, one of my dreams was to be on Top of the Pops, and I'm like, bloody hell, I'm here. This is amazing. 3 minutes of fame, and then you come off stage. And the worst thing is that I'm trying to be super cool. I'm trying to be, Duck Dunn or whatever. And of course, I look at it later and I look like the bass player in Paper Lace. I'm channeling the guy from Mud, whoever the bass player was.
Can you remember the other bands on the show?
I was just thinking this last night, and I cannot, but perhaps somebody can find out. Anyway, so I come off stage, and a young girl comes racing up to me. "Can I have your autograph, please?" And I'm like, no, you want that guy over there. Yeah. He's the guy. I'm just some guy from the record company who's just achieved a lifehood dream. and she's like, she doesn't get it. And I said, "No, you want to go with that guy?" And then I suddenly realized that as far as she's concerned, I'm a pop star.
Absolutely.
So I scribble something and send her away. And so I go home, and of course I'm living above a butcher's shop off Abbey Road on my own, an hour and a half later, having a beer, going, holy crap, I was just on Top of the Pops. And then 2 weeks later, it happens all over again.
Oh!
And this time, one of the singers is Kirsty McCall, who I used to be a press officer. A lovely Kirsty, who was wonderful. So I'm like, bloody hell, I've done it twice now. Then, about 6 months later, Jona puts out Stop the Cavalry.
Stop the Cavalry.
And he doesn't have a band. So I'm now the tuba player.
Of course, Christmas hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along with Will Birch from the Records.
Of course.
Yes.
Also a writer. What's his name? Can't remember for the moment. John Otway is in the band.
Oh, brilliant.
And a couple of other people whose names I forget. Oh, Bob Andrews is playing keyboards. And we're all dressed in... but
First World War uniforms, were you?
yes, thank you. So the first video I get to put, like tight jeans. Now I'm wearing a First World War outfit, which is made from an old blanket. And now I'm channeling Benny Hill playing the tuba. I actually got a close-up in that video. So I'm like, I go home and, of course, I'm now not ringing my friends up to tell I've been on top of the pop. And I'm glad that at last perhaps my Top of the Pops career has come to an end. At which point, Robbo signs a band called The Snowmen. And they have a hit with Do the Hokey Cokey Cokey. Do the Hokey Cokey Cokey. And the bloke singing has got a very Cockney accent. And they get to be on Top of the Pops. And they decide the Snowmen should be a 4-piece, but they only have 3 members. So guess who gets to be
Come on down.
I'm Dick, you've done Top of the Pops before. Can you get down to Broadcasting Centre by 3 this afternoon? So I now show up and I'm now wearing a white fluffy outfit with a hat on and have to do the hokey cokey. Which, of course, luckily for me, the dance moves are in the song. You put your left foot in, your left foot out.
You can do that.
And so I'm the one at the end who can't get the dance moves right. But for me, the interesting part of this is that about a year later, Jona releases this record.
All right, okay.
I think which was dreadful. It was awful. And Alan Cowderoy, one of my bosses at Stiff, said, "Hey, Nigel, you've got a camera. Do you want to make a video?" And that was my first video.
Oh, really?
Oh, brilliant!
God.
So,
did you shoot the Band-Aid video?
Yes,
You
I did.
didn't you? I remember that. That's incredible. How complicated was that, marshalling the troops?
Well, it was. Geldof did most of the work. I turned up to work on a Wednesday morning, and I'm just sitting in my office, doing whatever I'm doing. And ding dong, Nigel, can you come into Tony's office right now? He's wants you to have a chat with Bob. So I'm like, okay. And I have deep respect for Geldof. I know I'm not quite sure where he is on the star meter scale in the UK right now, but so I go in and I'd shot a couple of videos for Bob because his career was,
Absolutely.
going down fast at that point. And Tony Powell, my boss, says to me, Bob saw this this thing on Newsnight or whatever it was last night, and we're going to make a charity record at the weekend, and we want you to make the video. So I'm like, yeah, okay. What's the budget? Nothing. So I'm like, okay. And they give me a sort of a list of who's likely to be in it. And Michael Kuhn, who was the head of Polygram Music Video, rang me up in the afternoon. He said, look, if you need to buy anything, I've got 10,000 stashed away in case you need to buy something. So I rang around and I managed to get everything for free, apart from the film stock. Kodak would not give me a frame of film for free. So that's where the 10 grand went on the film stock. And Bob rustled up all these people, and it was like, be at Basing Street Studios at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. So we get there at 10, and nobody shows up. Not a soul. So there's me and a bunch of camera people and Bob, and Bob's effing and blind. And eventually, I think the first to show up was Bananarama, actually. And, I'm thinking, it was a very smart move, Bob, to ask a bunch of pop stars to show up at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I mean, anybody to show up at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And then by like 11:30, we had the whole lot.
They were all there, weren't they?
Apart from Boy George, who was flying in from New York.
Concorde.
Yeah.
With red hair. Dave and I were there, actually, yeah.
Oh, right. And I had to. As I recall, we shot the choruses first. You know, feed the world, and there was 72 people. I counted them from like CNN, you guys, Channel 4. You know, the list was endless, and they all were pushing in front of each other, and eventually they're like 2 inches away from Jodie Watley, and it's like stop, get back, and eventually I said, all right, anybody who crosses this, I found a plank from a building site across the street. Sarah, my assistant, and I stole this plank, put it on the ground, and said, anybody who steps across this plank will be kicked out. And they all went, ooh. You all went.
Yeah.
And we're shooting away, and it was extraordinary hearing them all then individually without any studio trickery. You know, they were all fantastic. Simon Le Bon.
And they had to do it in front of each other. That was the thing. I thought it was rather like stepping up to take a penalty, because you had to score, but you also had to do it in front of all your peers. You know,
and the first one was Paul Young.
Yeah.
So it's Christmas time, and stop. Okay, Paul, can you do it with perhaps a bit more accent on Christmas? It's Christmas time. Can you, and then Midge comes in with something, and Bob says something, and then somebody else, and eventually Midge I'm on the headphones. Midge goes, okay, enough. You're Paul Young. That's what we want. And he said, one singer, one song. I remember that. Just give us Paul Young. And so for the rest of the day, everybody just did it their way. Which I thought was fantastic. And, at the time, I mean, I was, 26, 27, maybe a bit older. I thought, bloody hell, this is my Woodstock.
This is it.
From here, it's downhill from here. But I guess this is pretty good.
This has been the high point, Nigel. This has been finally the high point. It's been absolutely delightful to have you as a guest. It's delightful. You're our first overseas, contributor.
Competitor.
And the first one to ever mention a member of the royal family in some.
Yeah, we've introduced a member of the royal family, and it's been lovely to see you. And we hope we'll see you back in Blighty. When this whole blood war is over. Do you?
And Mark, I will send you that picture review with Tempel Tudor.
Please do. That'd be fantastic. That was so nice to see you, Nigel. Brilliant.
Nigel, all the very best.
Bye-bye.
Okay, stay safe. Stay safe.
Yeah.